May the 14th, 1998. History will remember this as the day that Jakarta, one of Asia's great cities, was sacked by its own people. The day began with fresh fires and more rioting in a capital now ruled by the mob. The rage was directed against the affluent Chinese and their shops. They took the goods and sometimes also the lives. The remains of 6 people lay amongst the ashes in this room, caught in the blaze, too afraid to leave their burning home, with the mob waiting outside. The rest of the day was devoted to mayhem. There was little these people didn't take offense to. Even a traffic light was guilty. These looters took the kind of huge television set that most people dream of, but their urge to destroy was greater than their desire to keep. Sheer anarchy, reason suspended. This was one of the scores of department stores ransacked by the people from the slum next door. Anything was worth grabbing as long as it was free. Once the symbols of Asia's newfound wealth, the shopping malls have now incurred the wrath of a mob impoverished by the financial crisis. Anarchy now reigns supreme in the Indonesian capital. This is one of scores of places where rioting and looting has broken out, and the police and the soldiers are in no position to try and control it. This is now a popular uprising. Against the man in the picture, President Suharto, still abroad while his city burns. After 3 decades in absolute power, the people blame him for ruining their economy.
He must go down from this country. We must get out from this country, Suharto, okay? Yeah. You must make this.
Intoxicated by their newfound power, many feel that they have won. And although thousands of new troops are now being deployed in Jakarta, soldiers and citizens even embrace, perhaps a sign that the army is on the people's side. Or perhaps not. It's far too early to tell. With the soldiers came the tanks. The generals have vowed to help their commander-in-chief restore stability at any price, at any risk. But can they? Anarchy has spread to other parts of this vast country. In the city of Yogyakarta, rioters again fought pitched battles with police. It's difficult to see how the aging president and his troops can persuade anyone to put down their rocks. The economy has imploded, and people like him have nothing left to lose. Whether President Suharto survives this or not, the flag is already at half-mast for his country. Matt Fry, BBC News, Jakarta. Come to Jakarta and run for your life. Yesterday the army watched the anarchy. Today it took part. While these looters were scrambling to get away, the army behaved more like cowboys, shooting in the air as they rode through the ruins of Chinatown. It's not certain what these twitchy troops had in mind, but in the presence of a television camera, even this soldier became self-conscious and put away his gun. As many as 15,000 soldiers may have been deployed in the capital, but faced with regiments of looters, the army is outnumbered. Once strong, united and tough, there are signs that the military resolve is cracking. Best to let the much-hated police do the shooting. This motorway junction should have been packed with commuters. Today it was a battlefield. Anarchy is daily routine. These are the victims of rubber bullets. Fired at close range, they can kill. The hospital wards are filling up. Amongst all the confusion, no one knows the exact number of casualties, but in the capital, it's already well into the hundreds. Almost 200 people burned to death in this department store. Frightened sales staff and looters were trapped on the 3rd floor. The blaze was started by the mob. Ritual humiliation for the looters. These men were forced to waddle like ducks, and these to eat the goods that they had stolen. It's time to leave the madhouse that is Jakarta. The airport is crammed with expatriates heading out on any flight to anywhere. France, Canada, Australia, the United States, and now Britain are all evacuating their nationals. This is what they leave behind, a vicious power struggle brewing on the city's mean streets. There are signs that some factions in the army are deserting their president. He, in turn, has tried to curry favor by cutting fuel prices for his destitute population. As his capital continues to burn, President Suharto has rejected any suggestions of resigning. In fact, he is trying to regain popular credibility by using both the stick and the carrot. It's a tactic that smacks of desperation. Matt Fry, BBC News, Jakarta.
Reinforcements were drafted onto the streets of the capital today, a case of the army coming to the aid of one of its own. These men are helping to prop up the creaking regime of former military commander Suharto, and he needs them more than ever right now. It was following a previous bloodbath 32 years ago that the army forced his predecessor, President Sukarno, to relinquish the reins of power.
I, President, Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces of the Republic of Indonesia, appoint Major General Suharto, Commander of the Army.
Step by step, Suharto took over the running of this vast country, always with the backing of Indonesia's 400,000-strong military. But the current crisis is stretching their loyalty to its limits.
President Suharto has lost the support of the people. His only ally now is the military. It is they who will decide whether his faltering regime can survive, or they who will decide who succeeds him.
Yes, right. I like.
Good.
Good. Good.
But although some of these troops still support President Suharto, others are reluctant to be drawn. I'm not too sure, this soldier told us. I'm not sure about Suharto. If the army withdraws its support, this is one man who could succeed him as president. Applauded as he arrived for a news conference, Chief of Staff General Wiranto is hailed as a potential political reformer. The same could not be said for his number two and bitter rival, General Prabowo. It is he who is more likely to preserve the Suharto legacy. After all, he's married to Suharto's middle daughter, Siti. A population that has had enough of Suharto's nepotism may well deny General Prabowo his ambition, but that will not stop the army from having a major say in the post-Suharto era. David Willis, BBC News, Indonesia.
The exodus continues. More tearful goodbyes at the airport today. This family was leaving their Indonesian nanny behind to a bleak future. Those who decided to tough it out used the lull to stock up on food. This was one of the few supermarkets that had not been ransacked, hence the security. The prices were doubled overnight, and those who could afford them filled their trolleys, but caviar won't feed a nation of 200 million. Also trying to stock up Megawati Soekarno Putri. By chance, we came across the opposition leader on whom millions had pinned their hopes to lead them to democracy. No comment from the woman who's become camera shy in times of crisis. She took refuge in the restaurant upstairs, waiting, like the rest of the country, for the army to act. An uneasy calm may have returned to the streets of the capital, but nothing is decided in this crisis until the army has made up its mind. And there are some indications that the army has become more divided. These Marines are now pawns in a chess game between those generals who want the dictator to stay and those who want him to leave. Caught in the middle, the people, still counting on their army's support. But if your general tells you to shoot the people because there's rioting, would you shoot them?
Kalau udah sampai situ, no comment katanya.
No comment for that.
No comment?
No.
Yes.
Not exactly reassuring. While the generals play politics, these soldiers were killing some time in the city of Solo, 500 miles from the capital. Such is the surreality of this crisis. All around them, the evidence of the people's rage. A city burned down in one night. What a waste. Destruction triggered by an economic crisis that has left the people even more destitute. Without imminent reform, this could just be the calm before the bigger storm. Matt Fry, BBC News, Jakarta.
It was a day of protest and intrigue. The calls for President Suharto to go are louder than ever and surely now irresistible. But manoeuvring continues behind the scenes. The students again took the lead, eager to regain the initiative they'd lost amid the mob violence of recent days. Their target was Parliament, where several hundred were confronted by soldiers whose own loyalties have been uncertain. After a tense standoff, the security forces allowed them to enter the grounds of Suharto's hand-picked and docile Parliament. Their message, a simple one.
We want Suharto down. That's only that.
And so we will...
And the reformation.
We need reformation for economic, political, moralic, and so on.
They were soon joined by the man who's emerged as the most credible of Indonesia's opposition leaders.
To quit, to stand down, to go, to step down, to resign, whatever you name it, but he has to go.
The students were in control of Parliament. It felt more like a celebration, and the confidence of those who've been in the vanguard of this revolt was to grow as the day progressed.
The students refused to be intimidated. They vowed to step up and broaden their protest. But the real escalation is not here at the gates of Parliament, but in the growing number of former Suharto allies now openly calling for him to step down.
First, a group of eminent retired generals embraced reform and were embraced by the reformers. They called on the president to go.
You support the people?
Yeah. Yes, of course.
Do you think Suharto should go?
See, yeah, but peacefully.
Peacefully.
And on national television, Suharto's former environment minister denounced his old boss. He likened him to a bad tooth that needed to be extracted. He's one of 5 former ministers to call on the president to step down and was forthright in an interview with Channel 4 News.
There's no question about it. I think the president, much to my regret, does not hold the trust of the country anymore. He's got to go. For his own sake, if not for the sake of this nation.
Then, most startling of all, Harmoko, the Speaker of Parliament and one of Suharto's closest and oldest associates, turned on his friend. Indonesia's third most powerful political figure said parliamentary leaders will meet tomorrow and ask for the resignation of the president. That threw the spotlight more firmly than ever on the Indonesian armed forces. They've kept President Suharto in power for 32 years, and it's they who will ultimately determine if he stays or if he goes. Today, as in recent days, many soldiers and officers have appeared sympathetic towards the protesters. Tonight, the ultimate arbiters of power here, the country's top generals, met in emergency session at the Defense Ministry. There was fevered speculation that they would throw their weight behind the calls for Suharto to go. In an extraordinary move, they summoned the world's press, only to delay their press conference twice. A spokesman blamed what he called the rapidly changing political situation, which the generals needed time to discuss. When they finally assembled, they dashed the hopes of the reformers. Army Chief General Wiranto said calls for the president to go were not constitutional. And he warned that mass protests planned for later this week could degenerate into bloodshed and disorder. It appeared to be a fudge. And the only person who appeared satisfied was General Prabowo, Wiranto's arch-rival, a hardliner, and the son-in-law of President Suharto. At face value, the army's reluctance to add its voice to calls for the president to go is a blow to the reform movement. But little is as it seems in Indonesian politics. The army may be playing a far more subtle game. The next 48 hours will be crucial. Ian Williams, Channel 4 News, Jakarta.